Hi, my name is Stephen Turner, and I am the president of Gesher, Galicia. We are thrilled to have with us today Jenna Augen, one of the stars of Tom Stoppard's hit show Leopoldstadt, currently on Broadway at the Long Acre Theater. For those of you listening who are not familiar with Gesher, Galicia, we are a special interest group dedicated to the preservation of Jewish culture and heritage from the former Austria-Hungarian province of Galicia. We are also a genealogy group that helps people research their roots from this area. Leopoldstadt is the name of the second district of Vienna, which was a largely Jewish district that became full of Galicianas fleeing the fighting raging in their home areas during and after World War I. Jenna Augen is one of the stars of the show. She plays two roles, Wilma, and then in the final act, Rosa. Jenna is a veteran of stage, screen, and television, and her credits are listed on the podcast homepage. Welcome, Jenna, and thank you for being here with us today.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I'm happy to be here.
I understand that you are half Jewish on your father's side, and you have fond memories of Passover Seders at your aunt's house. There is a Seder in the show, and with Passover coming soon, would you want to describe your feelings as you play that scene in the show?
Oh, that is a wonderful way to start, because that's sort of the scene that roots everything for me in the show and always has done over the past 3 years. I started doing this play in London, and at first I was only playing Rosa in London, so I would listen to the Passover Seder as Rosa would hear it and listen to it and look back and see the family together and her family, and now I get to be part of it as Wilma, and so it's quite a central moment in the play. In fact, the line that I would say is possibly the fulcrum of the play is at the end of the Seder scene. It's Granny Amelia's line, "Let us not say then we know the story well. It is still our duty to retell the story," I'm gonna cry, "of how we were brought out of Egypt." Sorry. And so to me, that's to hear that every night, and especially leading up to Passover, and to be reminded both as Rosa and as Wilma and as an actress and as a part of this production, sort of the need for this story and the retelling of this story and this history and this play as a whole is just feels deeply important.
I have to say that for an assimilated and intermarried family, that was a very authentic scene in the show.
Yes, well, we had when we were building the show originally in London, we had a rabbi come in and consult, and we had several practicing Jews in the cast who also, contributed, and we contributed stories of what we knew and had experienced. So it's a mutually built scene by all of us.
And they do a good job singing the 4 questions.
Yes, yes. Oh, I think so. Drew is absolutely wonderful, who plays Barley.
Yeah, yeah. And I tell you, when we sit down for our Seder next week, that scene's going to hit home. That scene is going to hit home for many of us. Okay, now your Jewish family came to the United States in the late 18th century. Do you have any idea where they came from?
This is as far as we know. So actually, at the beginning of doing Leopoldstadt back in London, and finding myself playing this character, Rosa, who writes out the family tree and has all the information at the end and is the messenger of that information. I found myself really wondering and thinking, my gosh, I'm playing this character who knows all this and who knows all these people and her connection to all these people. And I actually know very little of many of my family connections. So I wrote to my Aunt Judy, who does, my dad knows some of it, but not nearly as much as Judy does. And she wrote back, and I'm told she's written everything out for me.
Oh, great.
And I said, I'm playing this character, but I have no really detailed understanding of our family, and I would love to have it. And so she's written it out, but it hasn't got to me yet. But she came to see, she and my Uncle Grant came to see the show a second time recently, and we went out to dinner, and she started telling me a bit more about everything. Here's what I know, and I don't want to say the wrong things because I'm probably not accurate on all of it. And some of it's quite confusing, even she says. So we know about Lena, who came from Hungary with her daughter, Sadie. And that's on my grandmother Rosa's side. So my dad's mom. And then on the other side, we know there's the full name is Augenlicht, which it means light of the eye in German, but it also means, and bright eyes, but it means, I found out from a German friend recently, it's the functional word for eyesight. So that German friend then said, someone was an optometrist. And so, I mean, a lot of it is guesswork, but maybe that's true.
So they were German or Austrian?
They were, that family, if I have this correct, was actually Polish, but on some border.
Maybe Galicia?
Yes, possibly.
Also,
I would not be surprised.
We have crack genealogists in our organization. If you want, maybe we could help you research that.
I would love that. I think we would love that.
Okay. So
anyway, so the Polish name got changed to Augenlicht, and that's what we know, really.
Okay.
There's a lot more that we know, but I don't know.
The Galicians didn't get surnames till the end of the 18th century. And since they were living with ethnic Poles who were speaking a lot of Polish, but yet it was Austria, right? So a lot of them took German surnames, and that's like the name Turner means tumbler in German. And everyone always said to my father that your name must have been changed. There's no way.
Yeah.
And my father swore that the name was never changed. And when I started doing genealogy, I got started trying to track to see if the name was ever changed. And I found a birth record of my great-grandfather with the name Turner. So it never changed. But a lot of the Galician Jews have German types surnames. So we'll try to help you out and try to.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay. Now, family trees play a big role in the story. The show opens with a huge family tree, which happens to be in the playbill, with characters standing behind their spot on the tree. And it's like, this is a genealogist's dream to see something like this, to see a show start like that. Okay, now I want to get a little bit into the story of Tom Stoppard. For those of you who don't know, I wrote about it in my column in the last issue of the Galiciana. Briefly, Tom was born in 1937 in Moravia, then part of Czechoslovakia. He fled with his brother and parents to Singapore when Hitler invaded. When the Japanese were preparing to invade Singapore, He, his older brother, and mother fled to India, but their father, who fled a few days later, was killed when the Japanese torpedoed the boat he was on. Tom spent the war with his mother and brother in India. During that time, his mother was courted by and then married Ken Stoppard, a British officer who, after the war, moved the family to England, where he adopted the boys and raised them as proper Brits. Tom grew up knowing very little about his Jewish background until he found out about his family history while in his 50s when he met some cousins of his from Czechoslovakia. This started him on the study of his Jewish identity, which has resulted in this show. It is not autobiographical, but if you know Tom's story, you can see how it relates to much of the show. Now, you were in the show in London when it premiered. Did you get to know Stoppard well?
Well, we were very lucky. He was always very involved in the process. So he was in the room right from the get-go, right from the first day. And he came a bit later when we were developing it in New York, but he did come and he did develop it with us. And yes, it's been incredible. It's been a wonderful journey. And meet your heroes, because he's one of the loveliest
Now, did he
people.
speak with the cast about his story?
Sorry?
Did he speak with the cast about his story?
Well, we were given research packets quite early on. There's so much in this play. There's so much to know, and so many references, and so much history, and so many anecdotes. There's so much to discover, so many facts. And one of the pieces of this packet was this brilliant article he wrote in Talk magazine in 1999, which is called "On Turning Out to Be Jewish." And it lays out very clearly his experience in finding his Czechoslovakian cousin at first, in how he approached asking his mother about their history, and just sort of his journey to ultimately understanding his family history. And
his mother wasn't very helpful, was she?
She wasn't. She was stumped. He gave her a notebook to write as much as she could down, and she didn't really fill it very much, he says in the article. And but what happened was he was in Czechoslovakia. I think I forget exactly why. I think he was working on a story, and he came into his hotel room. I think I have this right. And there was a man standing there who didn't speak a word of English, but he had a photograph that was a match of a photograph that his mother had. And he found that this was his Czechoslovakian cousin Ota. And so that's why photographs, I think, figure so much in the play, is because that was the currency that began his kind of one of the main facets of understanding his identity this way. And or his history. And the other thing that's very close to the play is he was working on Arcadia at the National, and he was sitting with family, and his cousin Sarka Gauglitz had come. She had ended up living in Germany, I think, and he asked her tentatively, how Jewish were we? And she said, "You were completely Jewish." And right. And then she turned a paper around and wrote out the family tree and told him where they had all perished.
Now his stepfather wasn't happy with him researching his Jewish roots very much.
Sorry?
his stepfather wasn't happy with him researching his Jewish roots very much. And at
Oh,
one
I
point,
can't.
asked him not to use the Stoppard name anymore. I read that.
Oh yes, that's also in that article. Is it at some point? But I don't know. I can't speak to that. But
Right.
yes, he speaks a lot about his mother and her experience of her own Jewishness. She
I think what
the
she
line
said
in the
was that
article is that
Hitler made us
she
Jewish.
didn't, excuse me.
I think what she said was that Hitler made us Jewish.
No, Tom, that's Tom's line. So she didn't really think about it much. She came from a very assimilated family. Some married out, some married in,
Right.
you know, and they didn't really think about it too much and didn't, I guess, practice very much. And the line in the article that he writes is, my mother wasn't Jewish until Hitler made her Jewish in 1939.
Right.
And I think that's quite profound.
Right. Yes, it is. Now, what would you say was the difference of doing the show in London versus in New York?
Oh, many differences. Even down to certain timings. Certain timings read differently in New York than they do in London. But one of the differences, and I've done a few Jewish plays in London, and I've actually experienced this a few times in doing them. There was a sense very like in this play of sort of a not, some people came up to me saying they didn't know. And in the way that Tom is discovering it, or that Leo's discovering it at the end of the play, I actually have spoken with several people in London who came up to me after shows, both in this and in other Jewish plays, saying that they didn't know that they had such a connection, or one of their grandparents was a survivor, because it was a similar thing in that, you know, they just sort of stopped practicing, went quiet, didn't talk about it. I think because of its proximity to Europe at the time, and it's certainly not everyone, but there were several stories that were quite similar to Tom's in that way, and that was something I experienced more in London than I have here.
Would you say that the audience responded differently to different parts of the show in London as opposed to New York?
Yes. Well, no, there are some things in the show that are universal, and he's such a perfect writer. He hits it. It hits its target every time. And I think the feelings in the audience are quite sensitive, and it doesn't matter to so much of the play who you are. It's about family, and it's about the love of family. And you know, the work of the play is memory, and the engine of the play is actually really love. And Tom writes about love quite a bit, and it's no different here. And that heart connects to all of it. What our duty is to remember those we love, and that is Rosa's work. And she inherits that work from her mother, who at the beginning of the play is working on the photograph album of the family, and she has a line about I don't want to do the whole line, but she died before there were photographs, so now no one knows what she looked like any more than if she'd been some kind of rumor. And then it sets up, you know, the work that Rosa inherits is exactly that, because if she can access Leo's memory, then there's another person on earth who remembers the faces of all those she loves.
Right. And as a genealogist, we can relate to that, because so many times we're going over old fiction picture albums, and they're not labeled, and like, who is this? And there's a great line in the show where they said that it's like dying twice. You die,
Yeah.
and then you die again when no one can remember your name or point you out in the photograph. And
And so
that hits home for Genia. That
Yes.
line really hit me as I was watching the show.
that's an Amelia line, and that's said around the same place. It's like a second
Right.
death to lose your name in a family album. And
Right.
and it sets up really what sort of the through line of the show, of the play, needs to be. Because when we talk about the Holocaust, we say never forget. And so a play that deals with the Holocaust, of course, must be about memory. And it is about memory, very actively so. It's not nostalgia. It's very much the infinitive, to remember.
Right.
And so that's kind of the overall sweep. I mean, there's so much in this play. There's so many themes, and there are so many, there's so much history. All of it, though, is connected to its beating heart, which is, I believe, that.
Right. Okay. So now when the play begins at the end of the 19th century, the wealthy fictional Viennese family at the heart of the story has no idea what they will face over the coming decades. You have been quoted as saying, "I just think the sense of safety at the beginning of the play is something we feel. And I think that should make us think." You speak of honoring the memory of the people depicted during these times. On the Today Show, you got emotional talking about this. Not to make you cry here, but why do you think this hits you so hard?
Stephen, I've already done it. I've already done it
I
3
know.
times. Well, I just think there's such a responsibility in this play, as I say, to this memory and to this truth. You know, it's not, I didn't think I would ever be, well, there's so many things that make me cry about this, but I didn't think I'd be performing this play alongside these headlines. I never thought that. I am aware of anti-Semitism and racism. I am, and how rife it is everywhere. But I did not think I would see such overt demonstrations of it while
Yes.
doing this play. And that there's Herman begins the play largely in our position. He's arguing for, you know, he's excited to be Viennese and part of culture and art, and we, you know, his line is, "We buy the books, we look at the paintings, we go to the theater, the restaurant." He's at the turn of the century, and he's excited and optimistic, and he feels part of Viennese culture. And I've been hearing largely the line, "Best of all, I would have liked my son to be a great composer. A virtuoso of the piano would be almost as good." He's interested in music, and here we all are, and he says we literally worship culture. And I've been appreciating more and more that he is very much in our position. We are sitting in a theater. We are worshiping culture. We are, you know, participating in it, and we're in a metropolis that also worships it. And, you know, and there is a sense at the beginning of the play of safety, and it's easy to identify with that point of view because that is where we are. And then Ludwig comes in with some really hard truths, and and of course is eventually through time proven right. And my hope, our hope, everyone's hope, is that that can't happen again, but we need to stay vigilant, and now more than ever.
Right. Now, the play hits particularly home for me. When the play covers past events, cast member Brendan Uranovitz said this story also informs of people's modern experiences of anti-Semitism. My father was born in Nadvorno, Galicia in 1910. He was a refugee. He was in a refugee camp in Moravia, the birthplace of Tom Stoppard during World War I. The family made its way to Vienna, and he lived in Leopoldstadt from 1918 to 39. This means he lived in Nazi-occupied Vienna and lived through Kristallnacht. The Gestapo came into his house one night and arrested him. After a few days, he was able to get out because he was able to show a visa to England that he had. He never used this visa because it was just for him, and he wouldn't leave his mother behind. Eventually, they were both able to get visas to the United States, and he left on one of the last boats out of Europe before the war started. As such, he was a refugee of both World Wars. Now, when my father came to the U.S., on his first day in the U.S., a cousin came up to him and said, "What would you like to do?" And he said, "I would like to take me to a place where I could see real Americans." And as people relating in Brooklyn can feel, he took him to Ebbets Field to see the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now, my father, who had been living at this point for 2 years under Hitler, was amazed to see Jews in kippas or yarmulkes sitting openly in the stands of a baseball game. And this was like an incredible thing for him, and he totally felt free. That made him feel free. But now we know that Jews in kippas or otherwise identifiable as Jews are getting beaten up in Brooklyn again. And that's why this play hits home so, and it's such an important, the timing of this play is so important right now. Now, have you ever been to Vienna?
I have. When I got the job, I immediately booked a trip because I wanted to, this was 3 years ago now, but I wanted to walk the streets that Rosa walked. I wanted to see her opera house. I wanted to see, I wanted to hear the music. I wanted to experience.
It's a great city.
And I wanted to experience Sachertorte, and I wanted to, and the Musikverein and all of it. And unfortunately, I only had about 36 hours, so I could only do so much. But it was actually a very fruitful trip, and I did pack a lot in. I went to concerts at the Musikverein. I stayed on the Ringstrasse, which is where the apartment is located in the play. Right opposite the Staatsoper. I took a tour of. I didn't get to the Kunsthistorisches Museum. I got to. I got to the Staatsoper and had a tour of it on my last day, and did see the old bit of the opera house, which would have been hers growing up, and I saw. But I saw the newfangled auditorium that was rebuilt in the 50s, which is also mentioned at the end of the play. And probably because I'd
get to
already
Leopoldstadt?
Sorry?
Did you get to Leopoldstadt?
Didn't get to Leopoldstadt because I was just there. It was a really whirlwind little trip. It's all I could do. I was too busy and I couldn't fit in more time. But I did go to the Jewish Museum in the center of Vienna, and that was a formative experience. And I saw the first thing you see when you walk in, or at least when I was there, is the suitcase, the dimensions of which are described by the civilian in 1938. It's the first thing you see. The truth of everything hits you very hard. And
Right,
in this play, it's easy to stay in the play because it's
right.
true.
Well, I will say that my father went back to Vienna once after he did not want to go back. He did
Mm.
not want to go back ever. But then as he got older, he said he wanted to visit his father's grave again. So he went back with my mother. My mother said he was like so irritated while he was there because he would be, everybody he'd see on the street, it would relate to him to think back that, these people were Nazis and these people were Nazis. And he visited his apartment house in Leopoldstadt. And as he's outside in the street, a woman walked out who was a neighbor, and he recognized her. And he said to her, "Hi, it's Morris," And she said, "Oh, you're the one who survived. You made it." It was like that, and he was like very irritated. He couldn't wait to leave.
Wow.
But I could understand his experience. But I did not have that experience there, and it's a great city, and it
I
has
will
a
say that
history that's unfortunate for us Jews, but
yes.
we go on. Okay, now Gesher Galicia is in great part a genealogy organization. I feel this show is a genealogist's dream, with the family tree being the backbone of the play. There's much dialogue about issues that we do genealogical research with, such as we were talking about with the family photos. I don't want to give any spoilers, but a constant theme running through the play is how is this person connected to that person? Sometimes it's confusing, but that to me is a charm of the play. And after seeing it, I wanted to study the tree to give me a better understanding of each character, how they were related to each other, and it gave me a better understanding of the play. I would then watch some clips of scenes on YouTube, and that helped me even more. In many respects, I think it's a play that you need to see a second time to
Mm.
really understand it better. Now, your character, Rosa, ties the whole story together in the fourth and final act. First off, how different is it going from playing Wilma early in the show with her personality, and then pivot to Rosa, who we might call a hard personality, and has to tell the story of what happened to the rest of the family?
Well, it's actually having played only Rosa in London and having experienced the play and listened to the play from that very upsetting and difficult point of view, taking on Wilma has actually been a great relief in a way, because it puts me in a part of the play that's quite funny and happy, and we're exploring family and we're falling in love with this family. Wilma and Rosa are more alike than either of them would readily admit. Wilma is definitely that one in the family. There's always one, and Wilma's that one. And she's a bit of a tough cookie. And then, but also I would say very loving and very much in love with her husband and her children as well. Rosa, as I say, when I was considering taking Wilma, because I was so kind of sewn into the Rosa position, part of what convinced me, and part of sort of the seed of what made that possible, that double possible in my head, was that Wilma has these lines about the photographs and what they mean, and preventing people from being a rumor. And then again, Rosa inherits that work in a more immediate and kind of violent way at the end of the play. And so that's kind of the through line for me of those two. Patrick, when we were speaking about it, was
Patrick is the director.
is the director. Yeah, sorry, Patrick Barber. He also had the point that he thought the double would be good, and has done it with other characters as well in the past, because of this idea that you inherit your mother's face. The DNA comes through each generation. And I thought that was a wonderful way of thinking of it as well. But it was the textual DNA of the photographs that really helped me do that. But in terms of the experience of doing it, I love doing Wilma. She's, again, it's fun. She's, they're at the party at the beginning. She gets to be with the family. Beautiful, turn of the century costumes. Love that. And she's quite funny, and
it's such a well staged show. The Patrick Barber, the director, fabulous. He's got to win a Tony.
He's wonderful. And his sense of visual and his streamlining is so excellent. There's not a stone unturned, and yeah, so it's actually made it easier for me. I mean, I do go off on tangents, but it was doing just Rosa in London from that perspective was actually made it really, really hard for me to put the play down. I couldn't, at the end of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop talking about it.
Well, that's one of the things I want to say, that many of us who don't work in the theater marvel at those who do and have to perform the same roles for 8 days. How physically and mentally demanding is that?
It's so to continue what I was saying before, doing, then also adding Wilma to that, and then things becoming more technical. So quick changes, wig changes, makeup up for when you're younger, makeup down for when you're older. All this, the wonderful, wonderful life of everything backstage. We have a lot of traditions backstage, and we have a lot of fun backstage. That all makes it easier to do it, and to do it 8 times a week, and to cope with it 8 times a week, because no matter what you do, and no matter how much fun you have backstage, the words of 55 and the facts of 55 and the facts of history are the same.
Right.
And they will always be there every time you do it, and you will always be saying those things, and it will always be difficult, and hard and upsetting, and so I've learned to sort of let the play exist in the theater, and then put it down when I leave, just a little bit better this time than I did back in London.
Okay. Well, the New York Times says that Leopoldstadt is the best theater experience of 2022. Many people say that the show is the front runner to win the best play in the upcoming Tony Awards. Good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Okay. And I urge all of you who haven't seen it yet to go to the Long Lake Theater and see the play. The run is limited and was extended until July 2nd, so you better hurry. And since our listeners live all over, do you know if there will be touring companies or maybe even a movie?
Oh, I can't speak to that. I don't know. All I know is July 2nd, at the minute.
Okay.
I would hope that it would, it's such an important and necessary and beautiful piece of writing. And it speaks to so many. It's very much, of course, about it's about history, and but it's also very much and very particularly a Jewish experience of that history. But it's very much about family, and there are things that can connect, there are truths and that can connect to all of it. And there are lines in this play that you could airlift out and connect it to now. And I say that with a sense of vigilance. And I also say that with a sense of optimism,
Right.
depending on the line.
Well, thank you so much, Jenna, for taking time out from your busy schedule.
Oh, thank you.
You're a delight in person, in personality, and that comes through to anyone who sees you on the stage. Good luck with everything through July 2nd and afterwards. And I want to tell all our listeners, if you don't know about Gesher Galicia, to check us out online at www.geshergalicia.org. And we will help Jenna and we'll help others research your family tree. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Stephen.
for being here, and happy Passover to you.
Thank you, and to you.
And again, thank you for everything.
Thank you.